So,
All right,
should we begin? Welcome,
let's do it.
welcome.
All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for joining us for the Masterclass on Cultivating Growth and Flourishing. If we haven't met before, I'm Michelle Quirk. I am a pediatrician and also a run coach and the CEO of Mindful Marathon, where I help make running easy and fun for busy professionals. And I am joined today by my good friend and colleague, Dr. Rashmi Schramm.
So good to be here. So grateful for you guys being here live with us. And if you're watching it later, grateful that you're, taking the time to do that. And Michelle is, as you know, an accomplished coach and physician. Just tell you a tiny bit about myself, and we'll go into this a little bit more. But if we haven't met, it's nice to meet you. My name is Rashmi Schramm, and I am a family physician as well as meditation and Ayurveda teacher, as well as a coach. I am the founder of Optimal Wellness, and I'm going to be really focusing on some aspects of meditation and how that can help us grow and flourish today.
Yeah, so I think by way of getting started, how it started and how it's going, I think if I could talk about my growth as a person and as a runner, it would be in these two pictures. So I was not always a runner. I was not an athlete growing up. And running was very far from my mind about 10 years ago. I went through a pretty difficult time. That was like a time of a lot of stress and change. I had finished my residency and moved to a new place, was newly married, like all of the stressors you can think of. And my dad was diagnosed with cancer around that time as well. So it was just a lot of turmoil. And I found myself in a place where, I was at work one night talking to a family about healthy habits and taking care of exercise and eating nutritious foods and getting enough sleep and all of those things. And I sort of had this moment like I'm talking the talk, but not walking the walk. And I decided something needed to change, but I had tried to run very, very many times before that and quit for a number of reasons, which we'll talk about later. But I decided to go about it a little bit differently that time and just really take it in small chunks. And so we'll talk about that. But I went from, a first 5K to kind of working my way through over time to a couple of marathons. And now I'm kind of bringing everyone along with me on the journey. And so I like to say, if I can do it, you can do it too. But we'll talk about sort of the how and how I grew into that person. And a lot of this, so I'm talking about it from the angle of running, but it's not really about the running and it's not about the exercise. So we'll get there. We'll tie it all up in a bow. So we know that there are lots of benefits of walking and running and physical exercise. And I put these here. You're not meant to read all of the small print, but I think we know, there are a lot of cardiovascular benefits. It lowers our risk of heart disease and stroke and lowers our blood pressure and decreases our risk of Alzheimer's and depression and type 2 diabetes. Like there are so many wonderful benefits. And what I like about this is that, it's small doses. So you don't need a whole big bunch. We all don't have to go and run marathons if we don't want to. Like 30 minutes 3 times a week will lower our blood pressure. And it's a great place to start. And one of my favorite statistics is that runners live approximately 3 years longer than non-runners. So I like to take that one with me too. But, the research is great. But I also like to tell you what my runners tell me. And I can tell you I've felt all of these things too, but my athletes tell me that they have more energy and better sleep, that they are more confident in other aspects of their life, and they are less anxious, more focused. And a lot of the physicians I coach have less burnout, which is a huge topic in medicine these days. So we are, we're very busy people, and there are a lot of obstacles to getting started with a new routine, whether that is walking, running, pretty much anything, right? So we're going to kind of talk about overcoming the obstacles. And I like to start with the first one is really our mindset and figuring out what is your why. So I like to have my athletes kind of take some time with a journal, maybe take 5 or 10 minutes and ask yourself why you want to start the new habit or the new thing that you want to do. And maybe for whatever answer comes to mind first, look a little bit more deeply than the first or even the second answer that comes to mind, and you'll get there. And just write that out and post it somewhere where you can see it, because it's very easy to be excited about something new at the beginning, but after time, we get a little bit bored. We kind of go back into our old ways, into our old habits. And so if we have a strong enough why and we remember it, we kind of keep it where we can see it. It really helps us to, for example, for me, get out of bed in the morning, in the winter, when it's cold and dark in Philadelphia, and go for my run. So here are some of my whys here. I just want to highlight, that's my mom in the bottom corner there on a camel in Egypt from this past January. So she is a brisk walker. She has done a half marathon with me. She's a very active person. And I think, I don't want to speak for her, but I think her why has to do with, having these travel experiences in her, she's now in her mid 70s, but she would like to do it as long as she can. And we have some other fun family pictures. So remember your why. That's the first one. Then we'll move into more of a how-to. So the second tool is planning for it. And again, right, I'm coming at this from starting an exercise routine, but this is really for any new habit. So what works really well for my runners is to plan for it ahead of time. So what I usually do is sit down on the weekend and look at the week ahead, and I put everything in the planner that needs to happen. Usually what I put down first are, shifts at my physician job, dinners or lunches with family, my husband, coaching calls with my athletes. All of that goes on the calendar. And then I say, okay, for example, right now I'm training for a race at the end of April. I want to run about 4 times a week. Where am I going to fit that in? And if you kind of look at it a little bit like a math problem, like where can I squeeze in these 5 minutes? And you write it on your planner and treat it with the same importance as all of those other things, it has more of a tendency to get done. So if we leave it up to the moment, again, when the alarm goes off early in the morning and we had it in our mind, like, hey, maybe I'll run today. If it's cold and dark, we are very likely to pull the covers back over our heads. So I will say that, again, it just starts with 5 minutes. So you don't have to come off of the couch and go out and run 5 miles, right? Like we're talking about 5 or 10 minutes at a time. And that's how I started going around the block 3 times a week and worked myself up to a 5K over 6 months. So it's not something that we need to do overnight, but we can get there. And then, oh, thanks, Rashmi. So the last one is a little bit more of the how. So in terms of maybe if you're a regular walker, I do coach a lot of people who have a regular walk routine, but they want to try running, and they're a little bit afraid of how that might feel. So one way to work this into what you do already is called mailbox technique. And so if you're out for a walk in your neighborhood, what you can do is just pick 2 stationary objects. So we'll say mailboxes, but pick 2 mailboxes to jog between. And the goal is really to be jogging for maybe just 5 or 10 seconds. It's not, and we're not sprinting, right? We don't want to sprint between the mailboxes, but just a light jog, and then start walking again and recover your breath. And when you feel like you're recovered and you want to try it again, you can do it again. And then, people get funny and say, are we in the city or the country? Like, how far are the mailboxes? But 5 or 10 seconds of a jog, that's really a basic walk run. And if you want to be a little bit more prescribed about it, so Jeff Galloway, he is sort of the father of run walk intervals. He's really amazing. And he has been teaching this method since the 1970s. But what he has you do is really make a prescribed interval. So say you're going to walk for 2 minutes and then run for 10 seconds and then walk for 2 minutes, run for 10 seconds. And so this way you kind of get into a nice little rhythm with it. You have that chance, you allow your body to recover in between those run intervals, and it gives you control. So it's breaking up the distance, giving you a little bit more control over how this feels to your body. And it speeds up recovery and reduces your chances of injury. So it's a really great method for those just wanting to get started, or if you are a seasoned runner and maybe you want to try a newer distance or try to get a little bit faster, it's a great method for that too. And again, I always say, like, start small. So 10 or 15 seconds of a jog interval is really all you need. And then give yourself as long as you need to do a walk break to recover. So how does, oh, that's Jet. I got to meet him and he's a wonderful, wonderful man. So how does all of this tie into growth? And I like to quote our friend and mentor, Dr. Una. So she says, how we do one thing is how we do everything. And again, it's not just about the running or the exercise. This is really about taking small steps forward in whatever it is we want to do, creates this momentum. And sometimes I find that the hardest step is really tying on the sneakers in the first place. But once we're in motion, things happen in succession, and we make progress that way. And the other piece of this is that it's about embracing self-care and really prioritizing ourselves and making that exercise or that habit part of your life as a way to get at self-care, which is not always an easy thing, I find, for myself or for my clients. And then the last piece is about staying curious. And I like to ask this question or fill in the blank. I wonder what it would be like to, and 10 years ago for me, that may have looked like, I wonder what it would be like to finally run that 5K that I have wanted to do for a long time and could never do. And that turned into, I wonder what it would be like to run a marathon someday. But that's how we start. So we can stay curious and ask the question. And I think staying curious is probably a great segue into what Rashmi is going to talk about.
Yeah. Hello, hello. That was fantastic. Thank you so much, Michelle. Really appreciated how you broke it down into those steps and really kind of helped us see and visualize, and really enjoyed following your journey. Thank you. So I'll start with just a tiny bit more in depth about myself. I am a family physician. I have 22 years of practice experience. I'm also a national board certified coach. I'm also a meditation teacher. I teach a few different types of meditation. I also teach Ayurveda, so I bring that into my coaching as well. I love speaking. I also have hosted retreats here in Florida. This is where I live. And so that is why I am, really excited. If you guys hang out, we're going to talk about meditation, how to fit meditation in. And as once we're done with the meditation, if you'd like to stick around, Michelle and I would love to tell you about an incredible opportunity that she and I have coming up for you. So this is me many, many years ago, because this kid is getting ready to go off to college right now. And then this one is a junior. And so this was right about the time when I started to have some semblance of burnout, and it sort of smoldered for a very, very long time. And it ended up, about 11, 12 years ago, I was feeling lots of turbulence mentally, physically, and emotionally. And I waited until I got really sick physically to really start to take very good care of myself. And part of that taking good care of myself involved a meditation routine that I really had to go start and stop, sort of like how Michelle was talking about. And part of my self-care healing journey involved just creating accountability for myself. So the very first, meditation or meditation teacher training program that I did, I didn't think I'd ever teach meditation. I just really needed the accountability, because one of the things that the application involved was sign here. If you say you're going to be in this teacher training for 2 years, you have to meditate every day for 2 years. And so that's really how my journey got started. And my passion is really facilitating meditation. I do one-on-one work. I also do group work, and I have a membership as well. And so I want to just talk about meditation and what it is. Sometimes there can be a lot of confusion or past, sort of misunderstandings or understandings of it. It's really, really simple. Meditation is just the journey from activity into stillness. That's all it is. And it is a formal way to practice mindfulness. And it is the fastest way to strengthen our mindfulness muscle. It's also a very powerful way to de-stress the body, to de-stress the mind, and to move from that survival situation and languishing into flourishing. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. And it's also a wonderful pathway, just like running, any kind of movement. It's also a wonderful pathway for cultivating growth, for being able to come into balance so that we are more open for growth. And so mindfulness also is used around a lot. There's a lot of hashtag mindfulness. And so I like to just talk about what mindfulness is as well. So mindfulness is generally thought of as the awareness that arises when we are paying attention to this present moment without judgment and with curiosity. I mean, it sounds really, really simple, right? But, most of the time as adults, we are moving around, causing some amount of turbulence, not causing, but the mind is constantly judging. I like this, I don't like that. What will she say next? What will she not say next? Why is she wearing that? All the things, right? And I put this photo here. This is my niece and my nephew with my older daughter last year. But one really astounding thing about young kids, if you see, is that they are always mindful. So, to me, it reminds me that is our ground state, right? So you're not really going to see a 4-year-old judging too much. They're going to be in the moment, and they're going to have awareness of being in the moment. And they are generally very curious, and they are generally, their ground state is pure joy, pure happiness once their, sort of basic needs are filled. So this is all this to say that we have covered up that essential part of ourselves, and mindfulness and meditation is a really powerful and beautiful way to help us get back to that essential part of ourselves. It also helps us live more skillfully, right? And navigate through the ups and downs of life. And through mindfulness, we can cultivate that growth mindset. We can cultivate that beginner's mind that really has to do with being steeped in curiosity. So why are we talking about meditation? And so one of the fun things I like to look at is stress, right? Stress is defined as many different ways. Stressors are the outside circumstances, and stress is generally defined as our perception of a threat. It could be mental, physiological, or physical, right? And so used to be back in tens of thousands of years ago, that this particular sympathetic stress response came about because it was incredibly useful and helpful, and still is, for survival, right? So we had to, if we came across a saber-toothed tiger, what would happen is the sympathetic nervous system takes hold, right? And so what might that look like? It looks like survival. It looks like fight, flight, or freeze, right? And so generally what happens is what happens is we take these very short, shallow breaths, right? And the heart rate increases, our pupils dilate so we can see a little bit better in the dark. We start to have decreased flow in the saliva. And really, this is a time for survival, right? This is not a time to worry about digestion, to worry about reproduction. So blood flow is shunted from the GI tract, from the reproductive tract, and into the larger, the skeletal muscles, so we can run or hide if we need to. And all of this makes sense. But really, in today's world, most of the time, we are not in physical danger. And most of the time, this kind of chronic daily stress is brought on not by a saber-toothed tiger, of course, but more like deadlines, traffic jams, taking care of others, really overworking, being out of balance, all of those things. And we know that even before the pandemic, there was an epidemic of chronic daily stress. And it's showing in so many different areas in our society, right? There are skyrocketing rates of anxiety, of depression, of obesity, of diabetes, of hypertension, of chronic illnesses that have to do with chronic inflammation that we can tie directly back to chronic daily stress. And so what does that have to do with meditation? I want to really have you take a look at meditation as a very powerful antidote to the chronic daily stress that we all face, right? Like if you're on this call, if you're watching this, you have too much stress. Like you don't need to necessarily overthink it too much. There is most of the time, there is some amount of stress that is not helpful for us. And so meditation can be the actual antidote to this chronic stress, right? Because we just talked about what happens in stress. The sympathetic go, 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 response is turned on. And so when we meditate, whether you're a first-time meditator or this is, the 20,000th time you've meditated, what happens is we go from that sympathetic go, go, go into the parasympathetic rest and restore response. And what happens immediately can make sense if you think about what happened during the stress response. So the heart rate comes down, and it's really incredible, especially in new folks as we I go in and I teach in different in places, and if they're wearing a Fitbit, they start to notice, oh my goodness, like my heart rate just came down into the 60s, and it hasn't been that in 3 weeks or something like that. Blood pressure comes down, all that makes sense, right? Because we're reversing that stuff. Blood flow changes. And so there is blood flow that is restarted into the GI tract, into the reproductive system. And what that might look like is decreased inflammation. That would make sense, right? And so those would be those decreased stress hormones that we can actually quantify over time. So decreased cortisol, decreased adrenaline. And the flip side that we start to see is improved physical health, improved brain health. And we'll talk a little bit more about this as well. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. I could probably spend 6 hours talking about the benefits of meditation, because now we have thousands of studies that have been printed on it. But Michelle has said, I cannot use 6 hours of your time, so I will not. So one of the more fun things I like to look at when we're talking about the benefits of meditation is what happens in the brain, what happens to your brain on meditation, right? And it is really astounding. So it turns out when we start to meditate, there are immediate changes that happen, physiological changes that happen. So within the first 5 to 6 minutes of meditation, blood flow actually changes. And so there's increased blood flow to the higher cortical centers, so the prefrontal cortex. And this is really where we can access our higher intellect, our creativity. And so you can imagine when we're in a fight or flight, we're really in that lower brain that Michelle talked about, in that midbrain, the hypothalamus, the amygdala, and the blood flow changes. And over time, there is actually significantly improved blood flow constantly, whether you're meditating or not, into that prefrontal cortex. And there's also improved connections between the prefrontal cortex and the midbrain, so that we have more emotional regulation. There is a higher cognitive ability or metacognitive ability to stay in a focused, in a grounded way, regardless of how chaotic or stressful the circumstances are. And so really, if you can imagine, if we're able to stay grounded, that is really one of the fastest ways to not just be balanced, but to also bring forth growth and flourishing. I am so grateful to tell you that I've gotten to teach one of my favorite kinds of meditation, Yoga Nidra, which is a very deep rewiring your brain, NSDR. We can call it all kinds of different things, which is non-sleep deep rest. And this is just a photo of one of the retreats that I've been able to teach at with incredible women that were there. And so just like Michelle said, I don't want to harp on this too much, because it's almost parallel to what Michelle just said, is how do we move into growth, right? And we're always constantly in growth, but how do we intentionally create more momentum for our growth? With meditation, for example, it's not that dissimilar to what Michelle just said, right? So she said, start small. And this is where I see huge success for the people that I work with. And that's how I started as well. I had to really start small. I didn't have 30 minutes twice a day to meditate. I do meditate for much longer periods now, but that's because I'm, a dozen or so years into this. But really, it's the consistency that gives us the results that we were just talking about. So even just 3 minutes a day, I have students and clients who meditate 3 minutes a day, and over time they notice that this accumulates and it adds up, right? It's always helpful to join a group or to have a friend who meditates with you. I know there are apps. Some people have good luck with apps and some kind of fall off. So if that's you, if you know you like an app, then use an app, right? And find some small rewards. One of the ways that I have found is really helpful for me, I wake up, I kind of, do my morning routine, but I also, before I have my morning coffee, there's movement and there's also meditation. So I really don't give myself like, so the reward for me for meditating, even though now I don't really need it, but I just kept it, is coffee, because I love coffee. So however that looks like for you, it might be something else, but small rewards, creating a small immediate reward is always very helpful, especially when the brain says, no, I don't have time. That's one of the most important things, because your brain will constantly say, I don't have time to meditate. So, but most of the time, the brain really can't argue if you say, I'm going to meditate for 3 minutes. And that is why it's really important to start small. We can use any place in the world to meditate. And in fact, I joke, when I first started meditating, my kids were little, I was driving them everywhere. I would literally at lunchtime, I would go into one of the exam rooms. You know, I'm a physician. And so most people think I was seeing a patient, but I wasn't. I was meditating. Because if I was in my office or in some other spot, somebody would come to find me, right? I would get to work like 15 minutes earlier, and I would sit in my car and meditate. I would show up, 20 minutes earlier for, to pick a kid up from something, and I would meditate in my car. So you can get really creative with that, but something fun to do can be to just like kind of create a small little nook, maybe in your bedroom or in some other space that you associate with being able to have that inward experience with yourself. That's also really helpful. Practicing mindfulness with your breath is always important, right? So we can be in any situation, and just connecting to the breath can immediately bring us into a mindful place. So that's another tip that I want you to take away, right? And then Michelle really teaches her clients, her students, to be able to move in a mindful manner. And running mindfully is one of the most powerful things that we can do. You can walk mindfully, right? So that just means you're listening, you're seeing, you're just in that moment without judging. So we can use every moment of our lives to practice mindfulness if we allow that to be, right? A lot of times we talk about meditation, we can't quite go for a run together, but it's really fun to actually meditate together. So why don't we try a very short and sweet meditation together? And why don't we then come back together here in just a minute? Anybody have any questions? I feel like this is maybe a good time for questions, or can we go ahead and try a little meditation here? Looks like we're good. Appreciate you guys. Amazing. Okay. So let's do this. If you are in a comfortable spot, so long as you're not driving, I want you to hang tight. We got ourselves a question. Running and walking can be a form of meditation, right? Absolutely, Stephanie, 100%. Yeah, 100%. So it's a beautiful way to practice mindfulness. Exactly. So why don't we go ahead and just very gently, if you're able to, close your eyes. And if that doesn't feel good for you, you can just have a soft downward gaze. And let's just take a couple of deeper breaths together and let out a sigh as you exhale. Creating an audible sigh actually activates the parasympathetic nervous response, activates the vagal nerve. So giving yourself permission for a big sigh, it's okay. And then giving yourself permission to just enter this moment. There are always many tasks, many other priorities, and you will get to them. Just give yourself the next few minutes just to be right here, just exploring what's here. And as you come into this moment, noticing if it's possible to drop the shoulders away from the ears just a bit. Can you relax the jaw just a bit more? And then just putting your attention on your breath at the level of your heart without trying to alter the breath in any way. And if you notice that your mind has wandered, you've done nothing wrong, just gently returning back to the breath. And then just gently asking ourselves, what does flourishing look like for me? What does growth and flourishing look like in my life? Just allowing any images or thoughts, sensations to come up, not trying to analyze them. Noticing if there's a particular vision that's magnetic for you. Now just gently asking ourselves, what am I grateful for? What are the many blessings in my life? Just allowing any thoughts, images, feelings to arise. And still keeping the eyes closed, releasing any images or thoughts, releasing the questions and the answers. Just returning back to the breath, back to the level of the heart. Now just repeating after me, repeating this particular sentence silently to yourself and filling in the blanks as I say it. I want you to repeat the following sentence. I am, and your first name and your last name. So I would say, I am Rashmi Schramm. Next, I want you to drop the last name and simply say, I am, and your first name. Now just dropping the name all together and coming back to I am. And just silently and effortlessly repeating, I am. I am. Just gently without forcing it. Still keeping the eyes closed, gently releasing the repetition and returning back to the breath. Noticing if you can follow breath as it comes in through the nostrils, deep into the chest. Noticing if you can follow it back out through the nostrils without straining, with curiosity. The breath is always with us. It's always our connection between the body and the mind. Not straining, not forcing, just following the breath gently and effortlessly. And just releasing your attention on the breath, still keeping your eyes closed. This time, just scanning the body very gently from the top of the head, noticing any sensations in the neck or the head. Not judging it, just noticing. Perhaps you may notice some tightness or tension in the shoulders or the back. Just noticing it. Noticing the abdomen, the hips, the legs, feet. Now let's just take a few deeper breaths. Coming back to the room. Perhaps asking the toes for some movements, fingers. And bringing in a deep sense of gratitude as you bring that vision of yourself flourishing and growing back into your awareness now. Now taking a couple of deeper breaths. If it feels comfortable for you, bringing your hands together, bowing head to heart. Just gently opening the eyes. So grateful. Thank you all for the opportunity. Thank you so much, Laura. I'm so glad. Yeah. Be really deeply resetting, deeply balancing, giving us fuel for what's coming next to take intentional actions. So as you're coming back, I want to just tell you a little bit about this amazing retreat that Michelle and I have put together for just a few people. And actually, Laura is coming. Laura's already registered. She was our first registrant, and it was the most exciting thing because it was wonderful to see that Laura is going to be there. So we're grateful for you. And so we want to tell you a little bit about this retreat. And so the retreat is actually going to be in Charlottesville, and you can see the dates here. It's the 17th of September till the 20th. So that's actually Sunday through Wednesday. There were a lot of times we can't quite get away from family and obligations on Fridays and Saturdays. So we wanted to create that opportunity for folks. It is at the Boardside Resort. It is a beautiful, gorgeous location. I know firsthand because I used to work there when I was a college student at UVA in Charlottesville. And I used to work as a waitress there before I went into medical school. So that was really fun. And Michelle and I, we know how beautiful the melding of movement and meditation is. And this is every time we create or curate something for this retreat, we joke, oh my gosh, we just want to go to this retreat, right? So what we really want to do is we want to give you all an experience that is an experience of a lifetime, quite frankly. And so we want to give you the experience of just retreating, right? And that's really what that means, of just removing ourselves from our everyday stressors, of allowing us to pamper you. We're going to have, Michelle's going to talk about some of the movement that we're going to do and some of the other things, but we're going to have deep, very, very deep and daily meditative sessions. And when we're in person, it can be really, really powerful because it's an energy exchange. You can see this is the grounds of the Boar's Head Inn. It is completely immersed in nature, which was the exact reason why we chose that space. So really, I'm going to let Michelle tell you a little bit more about our retreat.
Yeah. And I think we have these lovely pictures of the grounds, but of course, what drew me to it was all of the trails. And I thought I would like to run and walk on all of those trails. So we want to, create a space where we can move mindfully in a variety of ways. So it's not just running. We're walking, doing some run walk, hiking, yoga. So we're going to explore movement and kind of techniques to be able to bring mindfulness to movement. With my runners, I love to talk about levels of effort and body scans and things like this to really, take away the technology and kind of immerse yourself in nature and how the body feels while you're doing the movement. So we have movement sessions and meditation sessions daily planned for us on these beautiful, beautiful grounds. And so what's in store? We have lots of things. Again, when we were talking about this, Rashmi and I were both saying, well, we want to go now, but we have to wait a couple of months. So we'll have a welcome reception to welcome everybody on the first evening. And then we have 2.5 days of programming. And then we've got those sessions of mindful movement and hiking and yoga. And Rashmi will lead the meditations. As you can see, she is fantastic at it. And I have been her student for over a year now. It's been really life-changing to merge the meditation with the movement that I do on a regular basis. We will feed you. We have lots of delicious, nourishing meals. And we want to foster meaningful connections and give you coaching that is transformational. So really, you leave with a lifetime of memories. And as Rashmi said, like, we're deliberately keeping it's our first retreat together, and we're deliberately kind of keeping the number small so that we can foster those connections and community. So you can leave really with the tools to thrive in your busy life. So that's really the purpose. So everything, while we're there, it's one thing, but to take those tools back home with you and into the rest of your life, that's what we're really talking about. So we are excited to say that we are already halfway full, which is very, very exciting for us. And we have an early bird deadline coming up in a couple of weeks.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And if you're a physician or a PA and you need CME credits, we can make those available for you too. Michelle, shall I? So the last couple slides, I'm sorry, you guys, I had photos of my past retreats and they just showed up as like little tiny like writing. So I'm not sure what happened. So, but trust that there were some really cool photos of us doing yoga and meditation outside. So Michelle, is it okay if I tell them who would be like sort of the most ideal kind of folks to come?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. So most of the time, Michelle's students, clients, my students, clients, they are very, very busy. And so if you are busy, then this retreat is for you. If you are overscheduled, then this retreat is for you. And so one of the things is we want you to be able to just be open for some rest, for some restoration. And that involves exactly what Michelle initially talked about, which is a permission for self-care. And so we'd like to invite you as a beautiful form of self-care to come in and retreat with us, right? So we are, we're looking, this is perfect for you if you're open, if you want to receive, if you want to give in community, if you love being in nature, and of course, if you're ready for growth, if you're flourishing, then this is the retreat for you. You don't have to be a meditator, and you certainly don't have to be a runner. Really, what we ask for is just that you are open and curious about meditation and movement, and we can take care of the rest. We have some people who already meditate. We know some people who already run at high levels. And so we're looking to, deepen both of these practices. Then that's really our goal for you as well, is to help you. If you're a beginner, we're there for you. We're going to meet you wherever you are. And if you're ready to deepen your practice, we're ready to help you deepen your practice as well, right? So the QR code is here. And we're just really excited to host you guys. So if anybody needs the QR code, it's there. And you can see it's, mindfulmarathon.com. We're just excited.
We want to go, next month, but we have we have to wait a little bit, but we are excited to have you and to be with you on the journey.
Exactly. Yeah. So Laura says she can't wait. Super excited as well. And so I am curious if anybody has any questions. We know a few questions come up, and I wonder, Michelle, if you want to kind of talk about a couple of those questions that show up for us.
Yeah. I've had a couple of questions specifically about running. Like, do I have to be a runner, know how to run? How much running are we going to be doing? And so I will say it is not a running retreat. There are running retreats where people do, 50 miles in the mountains on the trails, and that is not what we're going for. We'll have probably a daily run walk in the morning, but Rashmi may be leading a walking group if we have people who are not so comfortable with running. So I just ask you to be curious and be open to it. And, even if you try it once and then decide if it's not for you, that's okay. But you don't have to be a runner to be able to come. And again, you don't have to be a regular meditator or know anything about meditation. If you're a beginner on that side of things, that's quite okay as well.
Yeah, I love that. And same for meditation as well, right? And so, Stephanie has asked oh my gosh, what a great, powerful question, Stephanie. So you said, will you discuss why you were drawn to meditating and running related to the stress of traditional medicine? Absolutely. So I was born in India, and I lived there until I was 12. And so even though it's not like I was meditating as a child or anything, but I lived in a very big extended family where yoga and Ayurveda, those kind of practices, were totally normal, and it was just part of the culture. And so it never occurred to me as anything other than just a daily practice. Now, of course, I left all of that behind in a way to try to assimilate and adapt to a new culture. When I moved here to the United States, I was 12 when I moved here, and so when I went to college, actually at UVA, I found a small group of meditators, of yogis. And so I talk about how I was a total closet meditator in college because I was, trying to get into med school, and I didn't think it'd look cool or it would even jive with trying to get into med school. But in fact, I think I developed so many tools then in order to actually get into medical school and do well when I was there, right? So it started then. And then, of course, during med school, residency, and beyond, I abandoned it again. And then when I started to really notice, like Michelle said, she was telling people how to be well, but she herself wasn't well. That was me, right? And that was pretty much every other physician that I was working with. I would, and everyone that was coming in to see me was super stressed, and I was super stressed, and I had really not very many good tools to relieve some of the stress. I was never taught any of those. None of us were, right? And so for me, it was just intuitive to go back to a meditation practice. And of course, meditation doesn't solve all of it, right? And so, but it was a way for me to pour into myself, to bring myself into enough balance and go, oh, okay, now I can take some action for myself. And so now I can figure out how to incorporate movement. Now I can figure out how not to eat terrible food. And so that was my first and most grounding step. And I've just always been very drawn to that kind of like self-contemplative, why are we here? And meditation kind of helps us answer some of those questions. So I hope that answers your question as to how I started on that journey and why I'm so deep in it. I'm still in like 3 different certifications, y'all. So it never stops.
I
Michelle,
want to add that I was a philosophy major in college, and I think I started asking some of those questions then, but I feel like I hit the pause button like through med school and residency, and then I found myself like extremely burned out and stressed out, and all of everything that happened with my dad and losing my dad. For a while I was running away from all of that, and in some ways that was okay at the time, because I did really fall in love with running through that process. But once I finally started like really paying attention to, I think it was really marathon training, when I was training all those miles by myself on the trail, thinking about all of these things that happened and my burnout in the clinical stuff, and like where was I headed from here. That pause was very powerful for me. And I feel like after I ran the marathon, I came back as like a running evangelist. And I was like, how come everybody doesn't want to come and do this with me? Like, this is amazing. It'll change your life. And then when I started meditating more regularly with Rashmi, like, wow, things have just really opened up. I definitely am a calmer, more peaceful person. And even in a very stressful environment, like at work especially, I'm much calmer. And the balance of this, I don't know, it's a really magical thing, the meditation plus the movement. And that's why I think we're really good friends, and why this retreat came out of all of that, all of these discussions we've been having over the last couple of years about what we do and the clients we work with and our own wins. And so that's, I don't know, that was a long answer.
Oh, it was perfect. It was so perfect. And I don't know if you guys noticed, but when Michelle had all of her runners there, I was one of her runners. So I'm a student of Michelle, so it works out really well. She has taught me how to be more courageous and be just a stronger runner and really own my movement. And so I used to just kind of like move just so that I would stay fit. And now I really just have moved into this like really beautiful stage of enjoying the movement just as much as getting the benefits out of the movement. So I hope that helps as well. Oh, that's great. I'm so glad that helped you. So we really hope, if you have any questions, please reach out. Like Michelle said, we have a very small cohort that we're looking to host, and we are half full. And we, the early bird special goes away in like 2 weeks or so. And so if you have any questions, or if you're considering it, please, reach out, and you know how to sign up, so you can do that too. Anything else? So we just wish you the very best of luck. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you everybody for coming and for staying and meditating, and yeah. And Laura, we'll see you in a few months.
Yes, so exciting.